Hello there, and welcome to Doodle Rust Designs, your one-stop shop for all your character design, illustration, and doodle needs. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, along with the Milton content, the current Cute to Ugly short series, and the Doodle Blobs, where I develop new characters, part of this channel's content will be a how-to series, exploring the nuts and bolts of developing characters. Having worked as an art teacher for the last 12 years, showing how-to examples and breaking them down into small chunks has been an important skill. Some of the how-to guides I'll look at will be simple shape construction, the 3Ps of proportion, poses and personality, line quality, cleaning your work up, adding colour, shadows and highlights. For this first video of the series, I'm going to look at proportion. Proportions are the relationship or ratios between the heights, widths, and depths of a subject. For human proportion, this would involve the relationship between, say, the size of the head to the body, the arms and legs to the torso, and equally, proportions between each of the characters you're drawing. Here, first of all, I'm laying out a simple guideline to make sure that each of the characters I draw in this video are measured against that same proportional guide. Traditionally, the human form is broken down into 7.5 to 8 head sizes. Here I've used an inch to represent each of the head sizes down the left-hand side of the page. And now I'm going to draw a straight line with the ruler 4 times across the page to make sure my characters sit symmetrically down that central guideline. Always make sure that you draw your lines nice and light so you can rub them out after you've drawn your characters. Now, using this left-hand guideline, I'm going to work my way down the figure, using it to fit each of my heads into position. You can see my first head sits inside that first row, and as I lightly sketch out the torso, again, I'm moving it down through each of the guidelines. Normally, 2 heads will fit inside of the body shape. And as I work my way down to the pelvis, again, making sure to keep my lines nice and light and creating the body through the use of simple shape construction. The body as a kind of a rectangle, the arms and legs as tubes or cylinders, and using kind of circular shapes for the knees, the shoulders and the wrists, where you would find kind of pivot points, where the joints would meet each other. Final few touches, just placing the hands into position. Not too much detail again, just keeping simple shapes to give a kind of a skeleton base. Now, moving forward, the fun part is to experiment with these proportions. My characters never normally sit within those kind of traditional measurements. I like to explore kind of oversized heads, taking the body as kind of a block-like shape, mirroring the shape of that head. You can already see that the body is a lot more kind of squat. It's shorter than the one next to it. The legs are kind of spread further apart. So not necessarily kind of correct anatomy-wise, but I'm kind of still using the guide of the idea that the head matches up with the shape of the body, and the body being kind of 2 rows deep, let's say, that matches to the legs as well. So proportionally, he's correct within his own kind of measurements. The third one, again, rather than a large head, I've gone for a smaller head. Again, so sort of flipping the proportions round, the body much longer, wider, almost kind of like a pear or a bell shape. The legs kind of come into the same sort of length as the one next to it, but a little wider, a little chunkier. So each time using that guideline to the left-hand side to kind of plot my body parts, again, breaking each part of the body down into sections. And again, not for me, I've never been overly worried about, you know, the sections of the body being correct anatomically. Might be a little bit because I've always found it difficult to draw that way. And if you're looking for a guide of how to do those things kind of correctly and to the letter, I mean, there's lots of examples out there that do that. For me, it's about kind of bending some of those rules and just kind of creating characters that sit outside of that sort of normal comfort zone, let's say. So as we come to this last one here, the smallest one of them, but again, kind of the body in proportion to the head, the small kind of stocky legs. Again, they sit within the same sort of character's shape. There we go, really. 4 characters, each of them with a simple kind of skeleton outline. And now I'm going to kind of just flesh these characters out. None of them were in my mind when I kind of started the drawings. And I think there's something quite nice about just allowing the character's personality, let's say, to develop from the drawing. With this first one being drawn against traditional proportions, I've now got an idea of him maybe being like a kind of a hero character, a superhero. So as I start to define his shape, he's kind of got a slightly defined, athletic, muscular arms. I'm already thinking now that he's got a kind of a hero's outfit on, pants on the outside, pair of boots. So again, now this is where I can begin to kind of define what originally were just kind of loose shapes, loose kind of sketchy marks. And that's why there's that importance early doors of not pressing too hard on your pencil, just keeping it nice and light. And the finishing kind of touches here as I add a cape and a kind of a Superman logo on the front. I'm thinking maybe this guy is a Captain Doodle Russ, or maybe Super Doodle. This second fella, more of a everyday kind of guy. Floppy, curtain-like haircut, t-shirt and jeans. Kind of the exact opposite of the kind of classic superhero proportioned character next to him. So for this one, because you've got this kind of much bigger kind of rectangular head, you've got to consider where you're going to put the features, how you're going to space them out. When I do a how-to video about expressions and emotion, I'll talk a little bit more about how just different sized eyes, use of eyebrows, the mouth in different positions can give you different kind of senses of what the character's like. For this third one, again, the head, the smallest part proportionally of the body, but that gives you an opportunity to create a character that is kind of sort of lopsided. What sort of character would have this kind of small little head and then this kind of heavy set, long kind of shaped body. So again, as I was drawing the features, that had to be replicated in the nose, long, rectangular shape, the eyes small and beady. I was already feeling like this character was sort of airing towards either a kind of a Frankenstein-like figure, big heavy coat, these kind of long, wide-shaped arms, maybe like a bouncer or like a doorman at a club, maybe even a mixture of the two. At this point, when I'm designing the character, because I'm now getting an idea of who the person might be, that affects the style of clothes that they're wearing. So this guy wearing kind of more of a suit or a large kind of donkey jacket. He's got these much more sort of heavy set boots that he's wearing. And as we start working some detail into this final one, the smallest of the four, his head twice the size of the original. You can see top of his head down to his chin is 2 times as big as the original kind of superhero character, but his head is in proportion to his body. It kind of almost flows down into it. There's no neck to mark the differences. Again, that's echoed in his kind of features. Again, this sort of heavy square like nose, the small beady eyes. Bit of a tash on this one. I think maybe a beard. I'm already starting to think that he's kind of got this kind of squat quality of a dwarf, a kind of little munchkin kind of character. And everything about him is kind of chunky and heavy and stocky. Now for this video, I don't plan to add any colour. I'm going to look to do a second video for that. This one, mostly now, is just about a bit of tidying up in pen. I really just wanted to show you the kind of initial concept of how to use the kind of traditional proportions for a character, and then how you can play with that as you sort of develop other ideas. So I'm just going to work through these now really quickly, just to add in a really consistent line quality across these. At times I might play with a thick and thin line, but here pretty much just keeping it close to the original pencil line. Again, at times just adding little features in, redefining exactly where I might want the edge of a jawline to finish, shape of a sideburn. In the next video that I do on these guys, when I return to them, I'll discuss kind of my decision making on the colours for each character. I might well play around with a mixture of alcohol markers, watercolour, colour pencil, just to show how each of the materials can kind of work with each other, to give a kind of a mixed media kind of response. So coming back full circle to the start of the video, here I'm just re-establishing that the first character sat around about the 7.5 heads. And as you can see, that one head shape was repeated again down to the bottom of his toes. Second character had a much kind of wider head, but his body was still in proportion to that head, and his leg lengths were again in proportion to that body. So although he might be a little bit out of shape, they all work in relationship to each other. The third character, that small, tiny head, but then a long, stretched out body and arms that almost touch down to his ankles. And the final character, again, proportionally correct within himself, but much smaller, stockier, heavier, made out of a series of just simple kind of block shapes. So I hope you enjoyed this video and the short whistle-stop tour to proportions, and also how you can have a kind of a little experimental play with them for a different effect. You may well see these characters reappear again in a video that I've already sketched out and drawn, and I will explore a little bit more about character development, their expressions, and a bit of colour too. And as always, until then, keep on doodling.